You pick up your phone for the 10th time this hour. You didn't decide to. Your thumb moved before your brain caught up. Nothing happened. No message. No notification. Just an old, restless urge that fired anyway. You tell yourself you're checking for something important, but the real answer is far stranger. Your phone is not the problem. Your brain is doing exactly what it was built to do. Nobody designed your brain for a glass rectangle that buzzes in your pocket. They designed it for something else entirely. Something that mattered far more, for far longer, on a landscape with no Wi-Fi and no warning. 2 million years ago, your ancestors lived in small bands on the open grasslands of East Africa. No locks on the doors, no walls most nights at all. Survival didn't depend on strength alone. It depended on information. Who was angry at whom? Who had food to share and who might steal it? Who might turn on you while you slept? Missing that information could get you killed. Catching it early enough could save your life. So your brain evolved to crave it. Constantly. Compulsively. Like a hunger that never fully switches off because for most of human history, it never could afford to. The anthropologist Robin Dunbar spent decades studying exactly this hunger. He noticed that primates spend enormous amounts of time grooming each other, far more than hygiene alone would require. Grooming is touch, yes, but it's also gossip with your hands. It tells you who's allied with whom, who's falling out of favor, who just had a baby, who got hurt. Dunbar argued that as human groups grew larger than other primates' groups could manage, grooming alone couldn't keep up with the flow of information a band needed. So language evolved to do the same job, faster, across more relationships at once. Gossip, in his view, isn't a character flaw. It's the original social network. It's how a band of 50 people tracked 50 shifting relationships without anyone falling fatally out of the loop. Think about that for a second. The instinct that makes you want to know what everyone is saying, doing, posting today is the same instinct that once told your ancestors whether the man beside the fire still trusted them. The stakes have changed. The machinery underneath hasn't. But information alone doesn't explain why you check your phone so often it borders on involuntary. Knowing things is useful. Compulsively checking for them is something else. For that, you need to go inside the chemistry of anticipation itself. In the 1990s, a neuroscientist named Wolfram Schultz ran a series of experiments with monkeys that quietly rewired how scientists understood desire. He measured the activity of dopamine neurons, the brain cells tied to motivation and craving, while the monkeys waited for a reward. A small squirt of juice followed a cue every time. At first, dopamine spiked when the juice arrived. That made sense. Reward feels good. But as the monkeys learned something shifted. The dopamine surge moved earlier. It stopped firing for the juice itself. It started firing for the cue, for the anticipation, for the gap of not knowing yet. Here's the part that should unsettle you a little. When Schultz made the reward unpredictable, sometimes giving juice after the cue, sometimes withholding it, the dopamine spikes didn't shrink. They grew larger. Uncertainty, not pleasure, turned out to be the real engine of craving. Does that sound familiar at all? Around the same era, a very different kind of scientist had already stumbled onto the same truth from a completely different angle. B. F. Skinner, working with pigeons in a small experimental box, discovered something he called the variable ratio schedule. If you reward an animal every single time it presses a lever, it presses occasionally, calmly, almost the way you'd check the mail. But if you reward it unpredictably, sometimes after one press, sometimes after 20, the animal becomes nearly impossible to stop. It presses and presses and presses, chasing a reward that might land on this try, or the next, or the one after that. Slot machines are built on exactly this principle. So, whether by accident or by design, is your phone. Every time you unlock your screen, you are the pigeon in the box. You are the monkey watching the cue. You don't know if there's a message waiting. You don't know if someone liked your post, replied to your comment, noticed you at all. That sliver of not knowing is precisely what your dopamine system evolved to chase, not the reward itself. The chase. For most of human history, that chase pointed somewhere useful. It pointed toward the fire, toward the people who might be talking about you behind your back, toward the rustle in the grass that could be a predator or could be nothing at all. The uncertainty was wired directly into your survival. Checking obsessively wasn't a personality flaw back then. It was the entire strategy for staying alive long enough to reproduce. There's a darker layer to this too, one that explains why bad news pulls at you harder than good news ever does. Your ancestors who scanned constantly for threats, who noticed the danger before it noticed them, tended to live. The ones who relaxed too easily tended not to. So your attention developed a permanent lean toward the negative, toward the alarming, toward the thing that might be wrong. That's why a single angry comment can outweigh 50 kind ones in your mind. Your ancient threat detector doesn't grade on a curve. It just keeps watching. Picture a band of 50 early humans again. Someone returns from a hunt early, face tight, saying nothing. Within an hour, everyone in the group has felt the tension shift, has adjusted who they sit near, who they avoid, what they say out loud. That instinct to constantly monitor the emotional temperature of your group never switched off when the grasslands disappeared. It simply lost its original target. Today, it's aimed at a feed instead of a fire. The hunger to know who's saying what about whom hasn't changed in 2 million years. Only the shape of the campfire has. Here's where it gets stranger still. The people who design the apps on your phone are not guessing about any of this. Many of them have openly studied Skinner's experiments with variable reinforcement, and they've built the same mechanism, deliberately, into the products you carry everywhere. Pult Refresh, which mimics the uncertainty of pulling a slot machine lever. The 3 dots that show someone is typing, then stop, then start again, stretching out the gap of not knowing on purpose. The unpredictable timing of likes trickling in over hours instead of arriving all at once. None of it is accidental. It's a slot machine wearing the face of a friend. You were never weak for checking. You were targeted by something that understood exactly which 2 million-year-old wiring to pull, and pulled it on purpose, 40 or 50 or 100 times a day. So what do you do with that? You can't delete the instinct. It isn't a setting buried in a menu. It isn't an app you can uninstall and forget about. The urge to monitor your social world, to wonder who's thinking about you, to crave the next unpredictable scrap of news, is as old as the first humans who huddled together for safety against a dark and unfamiliar world. It kept your ancestors alive long enough to become your ancestors. The instinct isn't broken. It's simply aimed at the wrong fire. What you can change is the target and the trigger. Researchers studying digital habits have repeatedly found that removing the unpredictability itself, turning off the buzzing, the badges, the flickering dot that Skinner's pigeons could never resist, sharply reduces compulsive checking within days. Not because the craving vanishes completely. It doesn't, but because the cue vanishes. No flickering notification. No phantom vibration, no artificial gap of not knowing manufactured every few minutes by a system built specifically to manufacture it. The ancient hunger is still there, quietly, the way it always has been. It simply stops being triggered every few minutes by a machine engineered to trigger it. There's something almost tender in understanding this. The part of you that can't stop checking your phone isn't broken, isn't lazy, isn't weak-willed in some moral sense. It's the same part of you that once kept a small band of humans alive on an open plain, watching each other's faces for danger, watching each other's hands for kindness, never once letting its guard fully down. That part of you loved its people fiercely enough to keep paying attention to them every single hour for 2 million years running. It simply never learned, because it had no way to learn, that one day paying attention would mean a glowing screen instead of a familiar face across a fire. You pick up your phone for the 10th time this hour. You still didn't decide to, but maybe now you understand why. Not because something is wrong with you, because something inside you has been listening for your tribe since long before there was a word for tribe at all.